Welcome to the Oh So Spurs podcast. Happy New Year and Merry Christmas to you all. We've already had the best gift we could have ever dreamed for, which was another Spurs victory, leaving us asking ourselves that question again. I'm not even going to say out loud. And today, our depleted squad slowly returns. Johnny, how are you?
I'm great, mate. Happy New Year to you. How are you?
Happy New Year. I am doing very well, thanks. Every
Good.
Arsenal fan in the country, in the world,
Oh,
is
yes.
miserable, and we are
Yes.
happy, so I'm
That's
extra
very
happy.
true.
And Deej, how are you?
I'm doing wonderfully. I'm not gonna lie, I was not super optimistic about the game, but hey, we managed to pull one out. So
We sure did. I think, like many of us, we'll discuss it a bit later. Wasn't overly confident going into that, given how strong Bournemouth have looked lately, but we pulled it off. And there were loads and loads of positives to talk about, but also some things we need to address in January. That's now upon us. So yeah, we're going to start by discussing that Bournemouth game and breaking down the performance. Before after that, we'll go into your questions. We had quite a few come in, which should be great to discuss. So we'll start with the game, shall we? Johnny, what's your summary of the performance?
Performance was it was a bit patchy, but I think it's like kind of what a lot of our more recent games have been. You know, the ubiquitous early start out of the blocks pretty quickly, threatened a few times before Sar's goal, and it was again another goal around the 10-minute mark. So that was really positive, and looking again like we might do as we did against Everton the week before. But as you said before, they're at Bournemouth have got an incredible record. 6 wins and a draw out of their last 7 games is incredible. And you know, some of those games have come against very strong opposition. They've famously obviously won 3-0 at Old Trafford, not United or any great shakes, but that's still an amazing result for a club like Bournemouth. And they've tied with Villa and won away to Forest and stuff. So I thought that we were, I think between taking the lead, or certainly till maybe 20 odd minutes around the time when Sarr went off, from then until really the second goal, probably Bournemouth with the better side, if I'm being completely honest. I thought that we were just a little bit lacking intensity. It got pretty flat, and we lost the ball fairly easily. But at the same time, as Areola was in his post-match interviews, like the difference was really in how clinical Tottenham were. And although, having said that, there were good chances that were spurned as well. Like Richarlison had 2 in particular, I think, before he scored. And, and another day, Sonny might have scored in the first half as well. He had a good opportunity. So, I think that's ultimately what decided the game. I mean, I think probably for most Spurs fans, we would say that the most significant thing yesterday was the return of Bentancur, really, which was like a major boost and very unexpected. And I think I was in a queue for it. I wasn't eating a kebab, but my son was in a kebab queue when at an hour before the kickoff, and we saw the team sheet. Thought that's got to be a mistake. Like, and everybody was so pleased to see his name back on the sheet. So that was brilliant. He came through, he did well, and I think obviously the injury to Sarr was very disappointing. Felice's injury was also, and that more hamstrings all over the place. But it's 3 points, and we're just 3 points off the top of the table. So like it's pretty, as you said, especially with the Arsenal double whammy over festive season. It's all the sweeter for that. So yeah, got to be happy.
Yeah. And Deej, do you agree with Johnny? Were you? I generally, when I saw Bentancur's name on that team sheet, I thought, nah, that's just some. They've given the intern the job over the Christmas break, and they've cocked up. And they accidentally put Bentancur on the team sheet, and then the pictures came out of him actually on the pitch, and you're like, "What?
Yeah.
How have we got to this point where we believe every transfer rumor from a journalist, but they didn't even know that Bentancur had obviously been in training for the last 2 weeks?" But anyway, going to the game. Apart from the surprise of Bentancur, what did you make of the performance?
I will say that if I were Bentancur and I saw our performance at Brighton, I would have done everything I could to get back on the field as soon as possible. But outside of that, I thought that we played a pretty typical, I guess, what I will now dub as Phase 1 Ange ball, which is have a very good start of the game, usually score a goal that comes probably, honestly, from our press. I think a lot of the goals that we've scored early have come from the opposition not really being settled in yet, making a lazy pass, and then usually someone like Sar, jumping onto a ball in the midfield, and then us converting quickly on a counter. The opposition then gets more comfortable, and we drop off a bit as a result. And then after a period of, I'd say, I don't want to say opposition dominance, because I don't necessarily think that Bournemouth dominated at any point in the game, but they certainly were the better side for a large part, especially at the end of the first. I think everyone who watched that game was just kind of praying for the halftime whistle to come as soon as possible. But we managed to get a foothold back in the game, and some clinical finishing from Son and some regular finishing from Richarlison led to, good win. I thought that Sar going off early hurt our midfield press a lot, just because the stuff that he does is just so hard to match from anyone else, and that's why I'm so happy that we signed him to a new deal to like 2030. Whoever's making those contracts they took the Harry Kane contract and they just copy pasted the length, which I am so unbelievably happy with. So that means that especially Destiny and Sar, they're stuck here for a while. I think that Son played better as a winger today than he did in previous games. I think it's so hard to move from being a 9 to a winger, especially in a situation like Ange Ball, where like they're asked to do such different things. And I think that kind of part of Son's game is something that shouldn't necessarily be understated. I thought Richarlison played really well, except for the miss. That one big miss. I think that he's putting himself in good positions. And I mean, he's been converting it, not necessarily a great clip, but at a reasonable one. And then I think Brennan Johnson had a much better game today. I was unhappy with his performance against Brighton, to say the least. But I think that he has the ability to put that kind of that low whipped cross in to Richarlison, because that kind of goal we scored like 2 or 3 times in the past couple of games, where Brennan Johnson will beat a man for pace, just like take a touch around him, whip a ball in, and then Richarlison will come and finish it near post. He did the exact same thing against Everton. So I think that kind of goal is one that we'll be seeing more and more often. And
for games played, Richarlison, because he's missed 7 weeks of play for injury this season. I forget how many games, but if you just go off games played versus goal output, he's on course for 15 goals this season. If he avoids injury the second half of the season, which I think that's what we're saying is that's all we'd really expect. That's more than Jesus is going to score or Saka. And on that, he's scored 3 times. I think Martinelli's got 2 goals. Saka's got 6 and Richie's got 6, but Richie's got an extra assist to Saka. So you've got on one side this lauded superstar, future of England, and then you've got this absolute flop, Richarlison, who are on the same amount of goals apparently, and one's in a team which is in phase 5 of Project Arteta, and one is in phase 0.2 of Ange Postecoglou's mission with Spurs. So I think there was loads.
It's not just that. You're right, Jim. And he's got 5 from 5 games now, and I guess you look at this, the graph of the season and the progress he's made, and this is the same season where he had the really difficult beginning phase, and he's come back from his most recent injury and his surgery, and since that point, he's really has looked a different player. I mean, we recognise his work rate and his tenacity and pressure he puts on defenders. But yesterday, he didn't stop running. And when Ange is talking about the effort that the players are putting in, and he recognises the reality of the areas that need to be improved, he acknowledges time after time the work rate that the players are investing in each performance, and I think Richarlison probably typifies that more than anybody else on the pitch. Like, Sonny's done that for years as well. They're just chasing down, and they are forcing errors. Like that is kind of how Neto's error came from, that sort of mistake. From that sort of pressure from the Tottenham forwards. So it's really good, and it's like what TJ was saying there about Sarr and the new contract, and same with Udogie. Like it's just adding into the whole sort of feel good that is just we're kind of, in spite of what we've been going through, where we are, but like these young boys. I thought Udogie yesterday also, his composure on the ball, his technical ability on the ball, and he's really what we've been praying for, really, to go at both ends of the pitch. He's very effective, and I thought he defended really well yesterday. But he doesn't just win the ball, and the level of skill he has. He's so composed, just takes the ball past the player, and just these boys, they're just beating players. Whereas before, kind of your players are just looking for a pass, or looking for an option, or they're playing the ball out for throw-ins and things like that. Like that's not what's happening with the players that we've got at the moment. Like, in Sarr is the same. Like, he doesn't just make a tackle. He makes a tackle, wins the ball back, and he starts a move, a forward move. And you could see that yesterday when Skip came on. Like, no disrespect, I love Ollie Skip. He is obviously one of our own and all of that, but he's just nowhere near the same ability, I'm afraid, as perhaps Sarr is. And he did improve as the game went on, but it was much more like watching Spurs last season when he was getting the balls. It was going backwards, it was going sideways. And so to have players wanting to commit their future, is really a long-term future. Young players of that kind of level of ceiling. We don't know what the ceiling is, but to have them tied down is brilliant. It's really, really exciting, and hopefully points the way forward for future signings that I know you'll probably be wanting to go on to later on.
I thought, Deej, were you laughing at Johnny's comments there, or was there something
No,
else?
I was actually, because you mentioned
paranoid.
No, what I was laughing at was you were talking about the old Tottenham, and I think that the two players that to me represent the old Tottenham that are still on the team, besides Dyer probably, are Skip and Højbjerg. And I was just that just reminded me of it like in the 90 first minute after Valise had pulled something or whatever, when we had the counter and Son was on one side and Valise, who was basically on a hand and two hands and a foot, running down the pitch, and Højbjerg had the ball, and instead of releasing Son, he just passes it to Valise, who just immediately just keels over. Man,
I know.
That was such a Tottenham moment, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was just so Tottenham. To be fair to Højbjerg, I think he was just playing off instinct. He was just like, put it through.
It's the right pass to make, and I think he can be forgiven for not knowing that Valise was injured. That's not something that you're necessarily going to be acutely aware of if you're not watching from a bird's eye view. I just thought it was a funny moment. I do actually, because we didn't do a post Brighton game for, we were all busy over the holidays. But I do want to give a quick shout out to Valise for scoring his first Tottenham goal. Good for him. Hopefully first of many. And I swear to God, if this is a long-term injury, I'm going to cry, because we need forward depth, and that was his job. I guess Dane Scarlett's back now, so hey, I guess he'll be. Our new.
Yeah, I do. To be fair, if you were living in some weird universe where they said I kind of feel when Spurs win a game, someone up in the clouds says, "Okay, you want 3 points, do you? Well, that's going to cost you 2 hamstrings." And then we have to go into a negotiation with that person, and they're like, "Right, who this time?" We're like, "Okay, just take Valise." And Sarr's off for AFCON, so even though I really AFCON's a massive competition and it's so important to him and his fans all around the world, can he just miss the first couple of games of that? And then Senegal, they'll be through, it'll be fine. But just take half of his hamstring and just take Valise's, and we'll take the 3 points. And I think that's how the negotiation went.
I guess my question would be, how many times have we negotiated for Ryan Sessegnon?
Yeah, he's been a complete scapegoat. Poor fucker.
Oh dear.
Yeah, Ryan Sessegnon has been completely sold out. But yeah, whoever was in charge of selling out Romero and Van der Ven deserves to be shot. But there you go. Talking of which, though, I am so excited that Burnley game aside, we could have a bench against United that has Van der Ven back on it and Maddison back on it, leaving us going into Feb. Even if we lose to Man United and Burnley, because Burnley's FA Cup, Liverpool, who are top of the league, win all their games. They've got game at hand, including their game at hand. We go into 1st of February with Romero, Maddison, Bissouma, and Bentancur back, 9 points off the title with 18 games to go. I'd have bitten your hand off for that situation, a few weeks ago. So I'm just saying, I think we should all dream a little bit, because looks like we're going to actually get the centre back sorted as well, which should be absolutely massive.
It does seem like we are moving quickly. I would not. Obviously, it's Tottenham, so I wouldn't be surprised if we waited until January 30th, and then the deal fell apart before unfalling apart, as happened with Porro last January. But it does seem that from what I've seen from Fabrizio Romano, who's like the only person that I trust anymore, because like you said, nobody really leaked that Bentancur was in training. Not that I think that people didn't know. I just think that they'd say exactly what the club wants them to say. And I think the club probably said, I swear to God, if you say this, we're cutting you off. So
I kind of feel though...
If for most of them, I would agree. But for someone like Ali Gold, who's basically a club mouthpiece, like he has to have known it in some capacity.
Yeah,
because like he'd have seen like training photos, and they would have like not given the training photos that with Bentancur in them. I mean,
for Ali Gold, I agree. I imagine with Ali, it's like
he's the only other person that I care about.
Like there is a little bit of clubs saying to journalists, you can have X information, but you can't paint it in a certain way. And if you can paint it how you want, but read between the lines. If you continuously paint us in a negative light, we're not going to give you certain bits of information. And I think that's the way all clubs manage their key journalists. And rather than, I don't think Ali Gold takes sides of anyone. He's probably the best we've got, but he'd rather not say anything at all than take a side with something. And I think for a situation like that, you're right, dude. You probably knew and just thought, can't say shit until 1 hour before kickoff. But it does make you question all those Twitter ITKs who claim to have this inside knowledge behind a picture of an egg. If they actually knew, what are they protecting by not saying anything if some player was out on the training pitch for 2 weeks? But should we jump into some questions, or some other bits about the game you guys want to cover off first?
I just want to give a quick shout out to Lo Celso.
Yes.
He was absolutely brilliant yesterday, and to be a part of, because he's a part of that transfer window in everyone's mind, the one that like every single player flopped, and I think that it shows like his character, it shows Ange's ability to give players a chance. I think it just speaks so highly of, I think, the club culture as a whole, to go from the guy who whereas having rumors leaked on a weekly basis on how he hated the training staff and hated the staff and was super rude and stuff, and us throwing him to Villarreal over and over again, to being I would say a crucial part of this team, especially given it has come because of some injuries, but he has stepped into that role exceptionally well, and he has been, in my mind, probably one of our best players in December. So I just wanted to shout out him. I'm really happy that he might not pan out here, but he's definitely playing up his transfer value a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's actually, I want to mention him too. He was actually kind of the main player featured in the program yesterday for the game, and there was a lot of really interesting quotes. And it's certainly from reading the article, I know obviously it's club produced article, so it's not exactly objective, but words that he's directly quoted are clearly, they're from the primary source. He was really talking very much in the terms of, and being happy at Spurs, really enjoying playing for Ange, really respecting and learning from him, appreciating his like motivational skills or assets, and also his incredible like level of detail and meticulous preparation and stuff like that. But it's like when you look to all of the as Deej was referring to, is kind of a player that really most of us, I know in the summer we were talking about like who could kind of come back from the dead, and Lo Celso was somebody that we did talk about as maybe under Ange he might be the sort of player that Postecoglou would appreciate and get something from. And he had his injury concerns earlier in the season, but since he's come back in November, December, he was saying that he'd scored some of the goals in the international break in November and the big games against Uruguay and Brazil. And then he came back and scored against Villa. Obviously, scoring against his compatriot in that match was quite a big thing for him. And then he also scored against City in the following match as well. A huge game that was too. So he seems to be, he was like talking about those moments in a way that was like, he was just really relieved, like obviously goals give you confidence, and to sort of feel that he's really contributing, being part of the squad and being an important player, because Deej was saying that he's, especially with the injuries that we've had, being more and more important. And I thought yesterday, at the beginning of the game, he was a little bit wasteful. Like he did give the ball away quite a bit, but his second half performance was superb, and the assist for Sonny in particular was really, really impressive. It was incredible. And he just tries things again, like I was talking before about the technical side of things. But we've got a lot of technically gifted players, and he really does stand out.
Oh, he's definitely,
And the other player, sorry, I'm monologuing, but Emerson Royale, who's like being an Emerson fanboy. Like I love what he's done, like how hard he's worked and how his response to adversity. And yesterday, I thought he was really, really solid, and he was putting his body on the line. He was blocking and tackling all over the place. And then there's like that really special. It looked better in the stadium than I think it did on Match of the Day when I watched it last night. But there was that shot he took from about 25 yards out, 30 yards out, and it was like he kind of like. He forced a proper save. He won the corner. Like it was a bit like the Walker strike against Arsenal many years ago. The same kind of position on the pitch. And just thinking, why not? Like he had the confidence to do that. I know you don't want them to do that very often. Don't forget,
he did score a goal like that on his debut.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. So, but I think Emerson's. Those lads have come into the centre defence. Both of them. You couldn't really ask any more. And then when we had Dyer on for the last bit, like he did what he needed to do, but it was like, as Steve was saying before, with Skippy and Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, like you just see those players and you do get a little bit more nervous, and so I think Royal.
Let's face it, he's a great guy, but you're going to take 80% of Romero over 100% of Emerson Royale at centre back. Every day, but as I think we said before on the pod, he's the right-footed Brazilian Ben Davies. He's such a useful squad player. I don't have like an urge to see us sell him, because I think he's your emergency backup for multiple positions, and he gets a lot of shit because he came from Barcelona and he's Brazilian. So every stereotype in your head goes rapid step overs, incredible attacking wing back who's going to take this league by storm, and then you're like, what? Like, he's just not that at all. And Ben Davies was also, I remember when we signed him, there was a Welsh fan on social media who said, you have just signed a player better than Gareth Bale for £4 million or whatever it was. And I was thinking like, yeah, it's going to be that. And he wasn't that at all, but he's still been such a great signing for us. Just not what we expected it to be. Did you have something to add, or should we jump on to the questions?
I think you guys have mostly covered it. I think it's especially talking about Emerson. I mean, he has been our backup for 3 of the 4 positions in the defense this season at some point or another, and I think that level of versatility is something that is very nice to have in a in a squad player, and same with Davies, because I think Davies is moonlit as an Ange left back at times as well. So those kind of players with that kind of versatility are super useful, especially while obviously it's not as good as having Romero or Van de Ven or maybe someone like Dragusin, God willing, soon. They do a job. They do it well. I mean, I think that most of the I think that they've done exceptionally well for what they've been asked to do and the position they've been put in.
Agree. They've done with. I think it is also that Ange is absolutely maximising the most out of what we'd call average players in inverted commas as well, and he deserves some backhanded credit just for it as well. But also he said, and there's a video I just watched before this, going into the transfer window, explicable, that he thinks the valuation of a player of any Premier League standard player does not reflect the difference in ability, because they're all so close in ability. There's an old interview that basically says that they're all so marginally close to each other in terms of how good they are as pro footballers, that he'll choose personality and work ethic over the player who's got that step up in ability every day of the week. And I think those two players reflect that. They are personality and attitude over performance. I'm going to jump into some questions now, but just before we do, we don't sponsor NordVPN or Manscaped or all that kind of stuff, because it's completely nothing relative at all to what you're interested in listening to this. But we did get a graphics designer to do some really cool Sonny and Richarlison graphics, and under the video, if you're watching on YouTube, you can check them out on there if you want some unofficial Spurs designs. They're pretty cool. But yeah, jumping into the questions. This one's from Zed Cameron on YouTube. Who is your starting midfield with Sarr and Maddison? With Sarr gone and Maddison back, and after a long-term injury, without the rush of January, and thinking more about next season and beyond, which positions should we be targeting after a centre-back? So we start the midfield question. So who is your starting midfield with Sarr out and Maddison back? Either of you want to put your hand up for that one?
I'll hop on. I think it's you've got options, like we've just been talking, praising Lo Celso, and it would seem pretty harsh for him not to be in there. But I think that I would be more concerned about how he slots in alongside Maddison than keeping Kulusevski in there, because I think we missed Decky yesterday with the suspension. Without Bissouma and Sarr, probably have Bentancur as your 6 and Decky and Maddison together, and see how that works. That would be probably what I would go with myself. But to have Lo Celso in there still, and then there's all the talk about Gallagher, which is interesting. But it does seem to be a genuinely quite a strong rumor, whether it actually happens or not. I mean, I don't know when the last time Chelsea sold as a player, but so if we had somebody else in there, it'd be even nicer. But it's a nice problem to have. And I think I'd give those 3 a go, personally.
Yep. Weirdly, when everyone's fit, it's our most oversubscribed position is actually probably midfield. But Deej, go on. What are you thinking? Do you agree, Johnny?
Yeah, I agree with... Whoa. I agree with Johnny.
It's only supposed to do that when I'm on my own. Carry on.
I agree with Johnny. I think the problem with that is you have 2 nailed-on areas, right? You have Bentancur is going to be in there somewhere, and you have Maddison is going to be in there somewhere. And I think that the third position is honestly one that would probably be taken at a game-by-game basis, given on what we need, which is kind of a cop-out answer. But
it's true,
because there are some games where I think it might be too offensive to have both Decky and Maddison. It could work. I don't know, but it just in my mind. So then I could see something like moving Bentancur over to like Sarr's role, and then having probably Skip, either Skip or Højbjerg playing that 6, because I think that's the position where both of them are the best suited to play Ange ball. But yeah, then for games where we're playing like a team that's going to just be sitting in a low block the entire game, I see no reason why we wouldn't play Decky, Madison, and Bentancur. And then, especially with Sun gone, I'm interested to see if we reprise Lo Celso's role as a makeshift winger, because I know he played there a little bit for Villarreal.
We're actually going to have like 3 midfield options when everyone's fit. Feels so new and refreshing after so many years of just lacking some. I always felt like we lacked someone in midfield, whether it was the Madison role, we always we don't have the creative person, or it was we lacked that Basuma type person, the ball winner, or it was always lacking something, and now it feels like we've got 3 or 4 options depending on who we're playing against, which is awesome. So thanks for the questions, Ed Cameron on YouTube. Next one's from our friend Rick. If I'll give this one to you, Deej, as Johnny started the last one, but if realistically we can only have 2 players in the January transfer window, by realistically I mean we'll cover key positions and they want to come and Ange wants them and Levy will pay.
That's the one, isn't it?
Yeah. I guess the question is, who are they?
Yeah, I think one of them. I'm going to cop out with the first one, and I'm going to say the first one is a center back, because I think we're going to sign a center back. We need to sign a center back. We've known we needed to sign a center back. I like the look of Dragusin from the half that I caught of Genoa when he scored. So that means he must be a good center back, right? But I think center back will definitely be one of them. I like the names that I've seen so far, and I trust in our scouting department that we stole from the newest super team, Aston Villa. So I'm hopeful there. I think a lot of people would probably say midfielder for our second one, but as Jim said, I think we already have a lot of midfield options. So I would go, shocker, if you've watched the pod before, I would go for a winger. I would go for a left winger who can break a man down 1v1, because I think that is the only kind of winger that we don't really have. I think Brian Heel could do it, but I just don't think he has the body for the Premier League yet. But yeah, I think that having someone, because we create a lot of 1v1s for a winger and a wing back. And we saw what happens when a winger is sufficiently better than a wing back in terms of 1v1 dribbling versus 1v1 defending when we played Newcastle, and Son just made Trippier look like someone who had never seen a football before for large swaths of the game. So if we could get like a performance like that on against an average wingback, I'm not going to ask for someone like Jeremy Doku who can break basically anyone down. But if we can get someone who can break down more fullbacks and then create those chances, then that's I think that'd be the ideal for me.
Yeah. All right, Johnny, we don't have time for you to disagree, unfortunately, because we've got 4 more questions to get through before the time runs up. But I think, DJ spot on, I would also say the same. I think we'd need a centre-back is obviously the must. There's no debate on it. The question is just about, is a central midfielder more important, or is a left winger more important? And right now, I think, yeah, DJ, if we could find a left-sided winger who could guarantee you 10 goals in the second half of the season, I would do a lot of things to have that in the Tottenham squad. So, yeah, Johnny, I've got a question for you next. This is from Chang on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it these days. But with Sarr and Valise picking up injuries, that will see them sidelined. Do their lengthy injuries force a change in our January transfer policy? That's part 1. And the second part is, what are our overall objectives for the season in terms of winning things, league position, etc.?
I think first question is, I mean, I understand where the question is coming from. I guess there's quite a difference in the effect or impact that Sarr's injury would have than Valise's. Having said, acknowledge what Deej said earlier, we don't want anybody out for long term, because Valise does still come on and serves the role. and now that Son's gone, we have one less forward option. So yeah, it's not ideal timing for his injury. I still don't think that his absence is particularly going to impact on what our priorities are. I think the Sarr injury is removing somebody who's a really important part of the. I think he started 16 out of 20 games this season, so he's a very, very important player. And we could see yesterday the difference it made when he left. So, but again, is his absence going to change the priorities in the transfer window when we have got Maddison coming back? And hopefully, looking at what Bentancur's recovery now, he's back in the frame, and we've also, I think Bentancur's injury maybe looks like it could be similar to Sarr. So hopefully, by the time we get into February, bearing in mind there are only 2 Premier League games in January, Sarr should hopefully be available. I mean, obviously, I'm totally hypothesizing here, but I don't think that either of those injuries really make a difference to our transfer strategy. And alluding to what Deej just said there, I think he's probably spot on there. I mean, the centre half, and nobody is going to argue with that. That was obvious from the beginning of the season. And I think I missed the last part of Deej's answer. So when you're talking about a player like that, I mean, the obvious one that we discussed before was Jota. I don't know if Jota was mentioned there by Deej, but he's a player that Ange is obviously familiar with, and he can come in and he's still only 24 years old. With the knowledge or the enjoyment I have had watching Celtic under Ange, I mean, Jota really stood out as being a very, very impressive player, and I think he's got the ability to come in. And certainly, no disrespect to Brian Heel. Like, I mean, I don't think Jota's gonna. I think he's still an upgrade on Brian Heel, to be honest with you. So those are maybe the players that you probably be likely to see coming in. I don't know if Gallagher's a reality or not, because presumably he would have to cost quite a lot of money. Well, he's obviously going to cost a lot of money. Even if Chelsea are trying to make some money, they might give it better terms. But I guess for a player like Gallagher, Spurs are much more of, perhaps more of an enticing prospect than they would have been in the summertime when Maddison was tempted to come in. When Newcastle were looking for him and he came to us, the captain of Chelsea to leave them and come to us would be very, very sweet. And he is a very good player. So, yeah, I don't know. I think that looking at the transfer strategy, that would be kind of the way I would see things. And then the second question, I guess I liked what Ange said yesterday when he somebody said you're a point off the top 4, and he said, well, I think we're 3 points off the top, mate, kind of thing. And his also when he's being quizzed whether we're in the title race or not, and he's kind of again having a nice little dig at the fact that Spurs are being maybe slightly disrespected because everyone seems to be all over Aston Villa. Yet, they were a late soft penalty away from dropping 2 points the other day at home to the bottom side, and those 2 points essentially would have had them only a point ahead of us as well if they hadn't got that penalty. So look, we are in the title race, I suppose, when you look at the table, and when, as you said at the beginning, Jim, we've got players yet to return, starting to come back in the next couple of weeks. So I mean, it's just game by game, isn't it? And we've been saying all along the fact that we've got no distraction of Europe could be really massive. And so, let's just go week by week. And maybe the inexperience of our players in that sort of situation would ultimately be a difficulty for us. But sure, Leicester did it, albeit with a very soft opposition. I'm talking about the opposition in their individual games. The year they won it, they had too many easy games. That would be nice if Spurs could still be in the hunt come the end of the season. Who knows?
Good answers, and I agree with you there. I firmly believe, and I'm going to stick to my guns from the start of the season, we are in a title race, and anyone who says we're not is just too scared of saying it out loud because they've been disappointed and hurt so many times.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean we are going to win it. It means we have a chance of winning it, and I think we'll still have a chance come March, which means we are in a title race. Deej, I'm going to quickly rattle through 2 quick questions and give you the final one because we're running over quite a bit. But just quickly, David Harris, do you think we should bring Jedson Fernandez back in?
Yes.
Yes, 100%. Build the team around him.
Do we
David.
even need? Is this even a question?
Sells a lot of jerseys, doesn't he? In fairness.
And then Richard Paul. I just realised your Twitter handle, Richard Paul, is @topdiv. How has Bentancur trained all week without anyone knowing? I think we covered that earlier. I just think the club is, since about 12, 18 months ago, just really reined in the comms that goes out of the club. And those who are given that privy information are told, if you repeat that information, you won't get any more. So we're just much more selective about what information goes out, because that's partly our fault as fans, because we demand better communication from the club, but we criticise every piece of communication they put out to us to like the tiniest minute detail, to the point where they've taken the approach of no information at all then. Which sucks, and I agree we need to have better communication as a club, but that is what it is. So the benefit to that is we could just see signings coming out of nowhere this January that we just had never heard of, that we've seen in recent times. And Deej, last question for you from Gav P, which is, just how strong is our squad that wins 11 games with 11 players out?
Yeah, I think that this is something that has kind of snuck up on us for several reasons. One of which is that I think some of the squad options that we have this season, like we mentioned before, haven't really been thought of as like good squad options or like weak squad options before this season. Someone like, I've always thought Ben Davies is good, but obviously Ben Davies often gets linked in with like Eric Dyer from the Conte days. So he, like a lot of people thought that it was time for him to move on. Emerson Royale obviously had probably one of the worst starts I can remember to his Tottenham life. Not necessarily entirely his fault, but he was just played in a position that he wasn't bought to play for under a manager that didn't really need him, and then the manager he was bought for was unfortunately out of his depth. I think that also, like another one, Lo Celso. I think that Lo Celso was probably, going into the season, I kind of assumed Lo Celso would be kind of similar, a squad option in the same way he was under Conte, and that he was there, something would happen, he would leave in January. But that obviously hasn't happened, and he's been a brilliant piece. I think also we have players that are flexible enough to move between positions, which I think is really key, because you're able to cover more easily across multiple positions. Like I mentioned, Emerson Royale has played, I believe he's played right back, left back, and center back. So he's played everywhere across the back. Kulusevski has played in the midfield and as a winger. Son has played as a left winger and a striker. Same with Richarlison. So having those flexible players allows for us to cope with injuries a bit easier than I think we would have if we just had, someone like Haaland, who is a fantastic number 9. But if you stick him on the left wing, he's useless. Like, I'm sorry. Yeah. So
running
having
straight line and kick ball in net is his 10 out of 10 attributes for that.
Yep.
Do it from this angle instead, it will falls to 1 out of 10.
Yep. And he's still a fantastic football player, and if you offered him to Tottenham, I would bite your arm off for him. But, in this specific injury crisis, he might not be as useful as someone like Son, Richarlison, Kulusevski, who can play basically anywhere across the front and sometimes even drop into the midfield. So I think, the versatility of our players, Ange kind of rehabilitating some of our players, and then just, I think, playing to a system that plays to our players' strengths instead of playing to the system that won our manager something in Italy. I don't know who I'm talking about there, but I think that helps a lot.
Good answer, Deej, to finish on. We've got to wrap up there, though. But
I'm really sorry, Jim. Can you give me 20 seconds?
Go on, 20 seconds, Johnny. Go.
Hugo Lloris.
I'm getting yelled at outside the door. We can't hear the background noise because I've got to take my son somewhere and he's very excited.
Oh, right.
Go on,
sorry.
Go on, Johnny. Go on.
Captain Hugo. Yesterday, there's a lovely presentation at halftime. Bledley King presented, Hugo with something. There's a really nice interview with Coity, and it was obviously a nice montage on the screens of some of his highlights over the years. So 400 odd games, and our most appearances in the Premier League era, and obviously captain for however many years, like 11 years or something like that, or whatever it was. Really, deserves to be mentioned, and obviously I know he didn't necessarily have the end to his time, but that's that we would have wanted. But it was really nice to see the reception he got from the supporters, and also like the affection that he generally holds for the club. So I think he's somebody who we will definitely see back at White Hart Lane in the future, even if it's just on the pitch side to cheer us on. He's clearly a big part of our history. So big up to Hugo, and hope he has a really successful time over in the sunny California.
Look, Johnny, we'll go one step further. We will dedicate this episode to Hugo Lloris.
Yeah.
So, Hugo, you didn't get your Premier League trophy with us, but stick that on your trophy cabinet next to your World Cup medal.
Exactly.
Got that one. Cool. Well, up the Spurs, boys.
Roll
on, Burnley.
Yeah.
Up the Spurs.
Up the Spurs.
Up the Spurs.